And that's a really good segue, Young, to someone who wasn't at Worlds. Jimmah, talk to us, mate. Obviously coaching the big dogs now over on Power. Can we rehash, like, let's go back to sort of London even, because it was sort of a bit of a crossroads for you personally. Didn't really know what you were going to be doing next season. Wound back up on the coaching panel, still coaching, doing anything at Power. So talk us through, I guess, the move. Obviously, Big Thieves coming on, and what's happened there.
Well, I'll bring up. I have slides and stuff for this too, so we'll bring up the Power line.
Beautiful.
All right, done. Let's do it. I like how Fever's really highlighted there. No, I mean, basically to recap, I mean, we were sort of going through our conversations back out on the old balcony again. But so second split, I was sort of in a bit of turmoil. Like, I just didn't feel like nothing against the game, right? It's just esport coaching in OCE Rocket League's a very niche thing, and you got to really love it. So sort of stepped down for a little bit, not officially retired or anything, just sort of kept my foot in the door. Power came up, gave us quite a good offer, really willing to look after us, and sort of we gave it one last hurrah. Our last hurrah wasn't that great, as you're all aware. We went 0-6, and look, I took it pretty well. Like, I mean, I think, as soon as we saw KCP take down BDS, like, I was just happy to get up and get around them. I thought, good on them. They're young talent. They deserve it. I know some people immediately sort of wrote to me and were like, oh, it's such a shame that, if maybe a Falcons showed up in the second split or second major, sorry, maybe like KCP would have had less points than you got, and, you guys would have gone to Worlds. But at the same time, it's just like, I feel like, hey, yeah, by points, that's probably true, but KCP, like, at LANs, were just the better team, right? Like, we'll sort of at the end of our thread, we recognized it, and we're a long-standing roster. Like, coming into March, I've been teamed with Amphis for nearly 3 years now, so
I'm so sorry.
Sick of him.
Yeah, he's sick of me as well. So I mean, we're a long-standing roster. We recognize that the landscape of Rocket League is evolving. Like, it's not a surprise that you see like Super Locky and Banana Head just constantly performing well. Like, it really is a shifting environment quick, and you have to keep up with it. So mutually, had an agreement with Express of moving forward. Fever at that time is, you're retiring. CJ, suddenly it just opens up everything, and so we brought on Fever, and he's awesome. Like, I probably don't have to say too much. CJ, like, he's a weapon out there. He brings a lot to the team. He's been a great fit. So, this is the next proper hurrah. And I hopefully this one isn't a 0-6 this time, or 0-9. But yeah.
So is this like, reinvigorated your, I guess, motivation? You sort of, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, massively. I think for me, because like I genuinely do love esport coaching, and I want to stay in it as long as possible, right? I want to take it as far as I can. And really, look, I see myself having kind of like the dream team. Like, I really like this roster. I like the org that I'm in. I've met some awesome people, networked well. So I feel like everything's sort of behind me now, and it's like, hey, like I've got to seize this and grab it with both hands, right? So motivation factors at its absolute highest, and it's actually funny because of that. It's like I'm now feeling like pre-season pressure. It's like, oh yeah, we preparing the best way possible. Like, this is the dream team. There's nothing to fall back on now. I've got all the supports that I need to have a successful roster. Like, let's actually make this a successful story.
Yeah,
so it's been good.
Well, this is like the dream team of RLCS 21-22 first split, right? Because in that split, it was a fight between these three people to be the number one player in OCE. CJ, what did you think of Fever? Because I kind of agree. I think this is a huge upgrade over Express.
I think still full credit to Express, obviously. I think that probably the combination with Power, I can sort of agree with you, Jimmah, in the fact that, I didn't sort of think that you guys were looking too hot, I guess, going into London and after that. So it was probably, it could have been a blessing in disguise, you could say. Like, if you guys did happen to make Worlds, you know, you might, who knows, perhaps you guys want to stick together, and then perhaps you're still having this conversation, you know, after split one or something. So I always like to look at things like that in terms of, you know, at the moment, in the time, or in the moment at London, you guys would have been like, oh, this is the worst thing ever. But, you know, I feel like I'm purely of the fact that everything happens for a reason, you know. So you'll look back at, you know, even the bad things and think, okay, well, that taught me a lesson or put me in where we are now. So I think that given all those factors, yeah, you get the opportunity to pick up Fever, and I think that's he's sort of, yeah, he's a bit of a jack of all trades sort of guy, which is why I'm very interested in sort of this lineup, and I guess querying you on I guess where, like, the play style, like how does this sort of fit? Because Fever is a guy that can play like that third man and just sort of see it all out, or he can be that sort of more aggressive player. So how is he sort of fitting in? Because obviously he's a bit of a jack of all trades.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and that's actually how I've been describing him, right? So, like, and also to sort of comment on what you brought up, I do think not only losing London was good, but actually getting flogged like 0-6 comfortably was good. Like that's like, you know, like, and I don't mean that in like, oh, you
In
know,
the long
good on
term.
us. But no, in the lot, because it really is like a bit of a wake up call, right? Like, you know, let's say we took it to the wire and we lost every game overtime kind of thing, or, you know, whatever it was. It was like, hey, you know, we'll outclass by face. Like, you could run that series again. We're getting 0-3 again, right? And then and that's just how it went down. So I think you're right. You know, like, I think not making Worlds was probably what is necessary for this roster to happen. And Fever, yeah, look, he's been great to have to the team. So the first thing is, like, you recognize that he's a jack of all trades in his gameplay. Like, he's just really efficient. He's really smart. His mechanics are great. He's always looking for ways to develop. Like, you know, this isn't even his final form. Like, he's still in a you know, progressing it as a player, which is awesome to see. And so, you know, bringing him onto the team, it really is. It's like, hey, mate, like, you know, you've got a vision. You've had a lot of experiences at Renegades. You know, you've sort of got an idea of how you want to play the game, rather than sort of shoehorning you into the team in that, you know, you're joining Power. It's like, this is a whole new roster. Like, let's work it from the ground up. Let's just keep the feedback going. You know, let's work out exactly what's happening, right? And we really have taken the off season as a bit of like a get to know each other kind of experience. And it's been awesome because on top of his gameplay, I consider him like quite a good athlete. Like, he's very vocal. He's very interested in going the extra mile. There's been a few activities where I've had the boys like reflect upon scrims, and we sort of devise things about like how we want to set goals or what we're noticing and everything else. And Fever like will go above and beyond, right? He's like, hey, you know, I've actually done some personal reviews and stuff, and he'll sort of run through exactly what he's noticing in the game and some ideas he wants to flesh out and exactly what that looks like. And the boys have really resonated with that. Like, he really value adds more than just his gameplay. He really is a great asset to the team just for who he is as a competitor, which is awesome. So, and that was a big surprise, right? Because I guess because I'm old, I don't often see that in a lot of young players, right? You know, they're just happy to get on and play the game, but he really took it with both hands and really wanted to build a team from the ground up, which I just thought was awesome. And as a coach, that's like, yes, like, let's run with that. If you're hungry to have your input heard and to help build a team, let's do it. So it's been great.
I've one really burning question too. Was Forky ever going to join the team? Was there like a consideration? What's going on there, mate?
Oh God, you know what? I mean, it's funny how it sort of died out real quick. I will comment on it because I feel like, you know, we've all sort of you know, moved on. Season started, so yeah. Look, it's not a surprise. Forky was in OCE. You know, if you follow Twitter, he did trial for the boys. I think that got leaked around in 2 seconds, so it's sort of in the inner circle, but it started to spread around. So yeah, I mean, it's not anything groundbreaking. Look, you know, we gave Forky a good go because at this stage everyone was sort of going everywhere, and we thought, why not? Like, it just happened to be an opportunity made, not necessarily from us the players, but just through networking through Power, right? And you know, obviously the timing with packs and stuff made it a little bit constraining and everything else. But look, it was really good though, because it was interesting to like have a whole nother player come into the mix and see how that was going to fit, right? And it's even good, like even going through with Forky and having him scrim quite well. It's quite good that even still when we had those performances, it really affirmed that this is the roster that we wanted. It's like, hey, like we've exhausted some really good options that we saw, and we've decided that this is the trio that we want. So I think it's good. I know, like personally, I don't like the trial periods in Rocket League. I mean, you know, it's such a messy spot. You have orgs sort of messaging around. You have players, you know, with their feet half in and half out of doors, right? So it's a little bit of an uncertain environment. But yeah, we certainly gave him a run, gave him a thought, and we ended up landing on this roster anyway.
Awesome. Well, speaking of the whole roster season, let's move on from Power because we've got like a whole bunch of teams that have made changes.
Gold news, yeah.
And big congratulations to the 3 teams, the 3 rosters that have stuck together. Ground Zero, obviously only being together for 1 split anyway, but they've managed to stuck together. Bandits, who are the X-Energy, are now the 2nd longest standing trio in OCE. And KCP being the longest standing trio from what I looked up on Liquipedia, it's only actually by a couple of weeks. So KCP in the last split of RLCSX formed, and Bandits just a little bit after them. So CJ, I mean, do you appreciate having teams actually stay together and not trying to steal spots, steal your players?
This is massively disappointing to see for a region, to be honest. Well, we've got 3 teams for an entire region.
These are
Australian, New
trios
Zealand,
that have
Browns.
stayed together. There are obviously other teams that have stayed and made
Yeah,
single player
the 3,
switches.
3 whole teams. Obviously, it probably goes to show, like, it is a long season, right? It's not like before when we had 6-month seasons, 6 months worlds, where you could sort of like, all right, I'll stick it out for a year. It was 2 seasons, you know, whereas now it really is 1 whole year. And not only that, you're basically playing every second weekend or, you know, 2 on 1 off sort of thing. So it is a long time. And I think that, you know, I guess the good thing is you are allowed to make changes during the season as well. So it's probably not saying that, you know, you have to stick together for a whole year, but you know, I can see why a lot of teams have made moves. I think that it's interesting, the Kakafin Shores, that they, like, from what I know, sort of locked it in pretty early and didn't really, from my mind, sort of consider like perhaps trying to get on a Power, you know, I guess Renegades when that was the thing with Kami before he left the APAC, or a sort of Pioneers. It sort of seemed like they really locked in early. So I like that confidence from them. Whether that'll sort of pay off. Obviously, those guys went to London for the Commonwealth Games and picked up a bronze medal there. So
we don't
good on-
talk about that.
yeah, whatever they picked up, you know, well done. But yeah, it's interesting. I think that they obviously were looking really good. I know Jimmah will agree with this. I guess the last split of online were looking pretty good coming into form. So maybe they're sort of taking that and running with it. They always give Pioneers a run for their money, beat us and beat Power as well. So yeah, they were looking good. But yeah, I guess it's exciting. Like, everyone loves roster moves because, you know, it gives that element of the unknown every season. I think it's better making more changes than less changes, because everyone will be like, oh, well, here we go again. So yeah, I'm excited for this season because there are a few teams that have made some moves, but I'm sure we'll talk about that in a minute.
Well, I think in terms of, you know, what you said with the year-long season, we've seen more retirements than anything else, and I think that makes sense because you don't, I assume personally, CJ, want to commit to another 9-12 months of your life playing an entire year. Do you feel like you have to commit to an entire year now?
Yeah, it is really, I guess, you know, I don't want to make this all about my own retirement, but it was largely, you know, a factor in, and I guess my decision was that, you know, I was sort of, it is a long year. There's a lot of pressure. I think that, you know, don't get me wrong, nothing beats, you know, playing on stage. Nothing beats making lands and playing in front of crowds and stuff like that. But I think for me personally, I guess everything else that comes along with that, like streaming every day, you sort of, unfortunately, streams are always like around dinner time. Like it's not a massive time commitment in itself, because you're only doing, you know, 2 hours. You know, I mean, for me, it's basically like 2 hours of streams and a little bit of free play. It's not like you're playing all day. But the fact that you sort of have to be there at this time every day. You can't really wander off somewhere else. You're sort of pretty grounded for the whole year, really. Like, you can't take too many trips away or anything. So everything else that went along with it, I was sort of like, well, geez, I don't know if I can do this for another season. But and the fact as well that I was getting on, I'd sort of was pretty content with my career, and it just happened that I guess we sort of peaked a little bit at Worlds, and everyone was thinking, oh my God, why are Renegades? Why are they breaking up? They're actually looking good. But I think that was a good way to go out as well, make the crowd and everything. But yeah, the season, it's so long, and yeah, you've got to commit. But I think that's good. It sort of separates the men from the boys, if so to speak, Yummy. Like, if you're in it, you got to be 100% dedicated for the whole season to make Worlds and to make all the majors. So, yeah.
Does that mean you're casting OCE now?
I mean, I would love to be casting OCE now, Yummy. The good thing about casting is you still get to like be a part of the tournaments on game day, and you don't have to scrim through the week. So, I mean, it's a win-win talent. So hopefully you might see me there, and me and Yummy can have a good chin wag on the desk. Maybe bring Jimmah on when he gives up coaching.
Do it. Yeah, done.
Have 45-minute desk segments. I'd love it.
I'll have it figured out by then.
KCP still default would be default the number one team for you guys. I know you talked about Super Team Jimmah, but
yeah, look, I think
How's scrims going, Jim?
Yeah, look, to be fair, scrims are going good. For once. We're doing pretty well. And look, you got to give credit where it's due, right? Is like, yeah, we had a pretty good, I guess, early scrim performance, I guess, like, because we're very motivated, new roster, right? But you can see that KCP have got themselves into gear. They're a good roster. Like, I like the way that they play. So I think it's quite fair to recognize that they are, the best team in OCE. But, I think they're also aware that, we're right there with them. Scrims, like, sometimes I wish I could actually just broadcast them, just because I'm like, hey, that was like a really entertaining series, right? And I'm always tempted to at some stage, because some of the scrims have been awesome to even just as a spectator. And there's been a few times where, I'm looking out for things in my coaching, right? And then I've just like completely trailed off and actually just enjoyed watching a scrim, which never happens. And you're probably aware of it, CJ. Like, you do your scrims for 2 hours a night. It gets a bit monotonous. Mm-hmm. But it's been cool to see, these two teams go at it. And look, KCP, like that, I think they're continuing to improve. Like, I had some question marks around that roster. I was like, what's the longevity going to be? I think Banana Head's really solidified himself as just an absolute threat out there. Super Lockie is, when he's on, like, he just doesn't make mistakes, right? He's just a solid player, really consistent. And then Scrub, I think he sort of filled in your boots, CJ. Like, he's real aggressive and confident. Like, he's out there really, really sort of catching people off guard. So I think they've really found what works for them, and they're really running with it. So they're a great roster. So I think, good on them for sticking it out. Like, I mean, some people even ask, like, oh, are they going to burn out? Like, what's going on? But yeah, they're certainly a top squad. We'll see how they go, right? But I think as it stands right now, like, they can sort of comfortably, hold on to top of OCE. I think, and if it's a tussle between us, KCP and Power, they'll be great, right? I hope the viewers enjoy that.
I will say Super Lucky and Banana Head said in my chat on Saturday that Scrub is currently the best player in OCE. So, obviously with all the bias coming from there, it'll be interesting to see if that comes out true.
That's good to hear, though, coming from there, because he sort of had been known originally as sort of the third ring on that roster. So he has really stepped up as well, even looking at the world champs. I guess the thing for me, I'll ask you, Yummy, like, let's go into Regional 1 this weekend. Like, if Power, say it's Power Pioneers final, Power knock them off, is that like bang, instantly new number one team?
Possibly. I just because there's the potential there for me that Power have got with Fever, and it's been 4 or 5 months. I think if it was a really, really close series, I'd still give it a KCP. I think it there's a lot of context there, so it's not just like an easy win this one, you're the best, which it might have been if they were kind of more even coming into it.
I think the the still question mark, which is going to be really exciting, is, that we're going down the line here, but say, heading towards the first major, if it is a Power Pioneers, say Power number one, Pioneers number two going into the first major, there's still for me is that question mark on because obviously Jimmah you could say last season, you guys internationally didn't really find what you found online, whereas Pioneers, you could say they were sort of, 95% close to what we saw online in OCE. So that's still, I reckon, the question mark for me is knowing that Pioneers are proven on land. You sort of know what you're going to get. They're going to put in a pretty good performance. They could, on their day, knock a lot of these international teams off, whereas, obviously it's still unproven. Torsos has had good series. Amphis has probably been pretty quiet internationally compared to sort of what we saw regionally, and Fever's obviously been popping off internationally. So I think that is still the question mark on Power. Would you sort of say that as well? You sort of like the land. There is a question mark around land play, or is that just like how maybe more where your team was trending last season, or that it didn't quite work out?
Yeah, definitely. I think, and that's part of the reason why I was quite happy to see KCP actually go to Worlds, right? I know, bring it back. People brought up to me like, oh, if you had those extra points, it would have been fine, but this and that. But I thought, hey, at the end of the day, right, they took down, some good teams. Like they showed up on stage, right? And I think what you brought up is probably the more important one, actually. It's not necessarily because at the end of the day, it can be a team is underperforming, but I think that they really mapped on their online play to LAN. And I think that's like really vindicative of like a successful team. Like when I think Furia, like they're almost like a 1-to-1 team. Like what you see them online, they'll just whip that out on stage, no worries. And I think that's really cool. Whereas I felt like maybe the lack of experience, like, and obviously I'm in that camp as well. Like LANs are very new to me as well. We didn't quite find that. We had some glimpses of moments, right? Like I think it's like take when we came across Renegades in Sweden, right, on land. Like we're like, all right, we know this team, we know how to play. Like let's do it, and we found our groove there, right? But then you were the best team that we took down in Sweden, whereas you guys took it to Endpoint and Furia, right? Which is how do you because like to me your performance is better than ours, but we still took you down on land, but I still rate yours higher because of how you performed against some really good teams. So yeah, I don't know how else to sort of measure it. I guess it's completely up to however you assess these things, but I'm fully there with you that KCP at least have that going for them if Power and KCP are the top teams traveling over.
Yeah, they certainly, I feel like they struggled a bit with experience in the first two, in the winter and spring majors. Winter in all their series, getting the first game and then kind of changing how they played, and spring up against SSG when they were 2 games up and then went into their shell, which is often what happens when teams feel confident that they're about to win. So they've learned those harsh lessons. Hopefully this is the season for them to do it, to have a big performance. I'm going to put one more question I had about KCP and Power before we move on. Do KCP, how many majors do both KCP and Power go to this season?
Like both of them together?
Both of them together.
Maximum of 3. Okay.
Yeah.
A minimum 2. I think I don't want to say I hope 3, but they probably should go to all 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, look, it's going to sound a bit arrogant, but I do think that there is a gap between, second and third in OCE. So on paper, it should be, I think, all 3. Who knows how the split goes up? Like for all we know, like take this split we're going through now, it could be that us and KCP end up on the same side of the single elim top 8, and we consistently knock each other out, and then like let's say ground 0 make it to the grand final every time, and they make it through. And I think there's always that can happen. I think on paper, like head to head, I think us and KCP should be going every single time. But with OCE, only 2 teams go, and when you have single elim top 8s, it can really feel like a bit of a roll of the dice there. So I wouldn't be surprised if something like that does happen where, like that third team just happens to get the better side of the bracket, and that's enough to pull through a second seed despite the other team perhaps being better than them.
There's hope there, is that the new point system makes it a lot harder for that to happen, in that like coming second is not ideal for making a major, because first place points are so much higher than second now, that you kind of need to get at least a first in OCE where there's only 2 slots. But for me, I hope that they both go to 2, or like that we have, it doesn't even have to be them, but like I hope that we get at least 3 teams getting to experience majors this year. It is a long season. At the very beginning of last season, we said the same thing about there being a huge gap between the top 2 and the rest. And then obviously KCB and Ground Zero caught up over the season. So I expect the same thing to happen here. But I do want to see more than 2 teams get a chance. I also would like to see a team really, really get powerful and do the kind of Alpha Sydney Chiefs thing, start dominating and having good results at Worlds. I don't care really who it is.
Before we sort of jump into the roster change, I just want to sort of round out, because we sort of just talked about the top teams. I feel like we can sort of wrap up here. The one sort of, it's a problem with OCE right now is that, we didn't have much sort of internationally experienced talent, and we have sort of consolidated that talent again from 3 teams into 2 teams. If Kami had stayed and, perhaps found a roster here, at least you think if they make a major, then okay, well, they've got Kami and he's going to be able to, lift that team on land. The real problem right now is that we're sort of in that old OCE time of like your Canberra Havocs and stuff. I feel like we're going to get that situation if a team that isn't a Pioneers or Power go to a major. Like, it's going to be great experience for them, but I just think they're going to get absolutely wiped the floor with, considering how strong every other region is now, because we just don't have anyone else outside of Power and Pioneers that have played at a major. I think that's really, like, I don't want to say worrying for OCE, but we're sort of like, we need these 2 teams to be so good, but we're sort of at the same time, we don't have anyone else that, if they go, like, it'll just be like it'll be a nice learning lesson for them. And it feels like a real year of growth, I guess, for the region. But yeah, we've really got the strongest, we've got 2 teams right now. It feels like, at least internationally, we've only got 2 teams that can do some damage, which is like no disrespect to say Ground Zero, who are probably the 3rd team. It's just that, like, they haven't played internationally against the top teams. They've never, like, boot camped. Obviously, they went to Commonwealth Games, so that was when Worlds was on and all the other teams are over there. So that is, I guess, the worry for me in terms of, like, OCE internationally, is that we, obviously we want to keep moving forward and keep getting more and more competitive, but we really have consolidated an already small talent pool, like, of international experienced teams, even smaller now. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's still nice to see new faces, even if we don't expect it. But I could see your side where you maybe want both of them to go and earn, and then do really well and earn OCE a 3rd spot for Worlds, and that's how people get through.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. Let's get into some of the other roster changes that have occurred. So here we have the teams that have stayed the same but made one roster change. So we have the Lake Show, so the 3-1-2s. Dropped Sprat, picked up Hunter. I've talked a lot about this on the weekends, so Jimmah, you got any thoughts on this roster?
Yeah, the Lake Show. I actually think they're all right. So I know that we've scrimmed them a fair bit. And I think I sort of put Mock in that camp of he's an up and coming kid still. Obviously Hunter is very much that as well. Like, he's sort of finding his feet. They have their moments of grace, which is great. You'll sort of just like play them and you sort of not get lazy with them a bit, but you sort of like, all right, we're quite comfortable and we can sort of play our game, and then randomly, like, Hunt will just like pop off for like a quick 10 seconds and it's like, oh, that was pretty cool. Nice one. So, and you have those moments, right? So look, they're all right. I do think they're going to hover in that. I forget where they actually placed. So they placed 5th, was it? Yes, they did. Yeah. So they're 5th at the moment. And I think that's basically where I kind of put them. I think of them as like a top 6 team. You could probably, you know, put them in equal footing to like the new Fiverr roster, along with, you know, 'cause I don't know how they look against Ground Zero, and this is actually why I'm really looking forward to like PAX when that comes on. I wouldn't mind seeing how these teams go head to head on LAN. But you know, it's been a good move so far. I'd like to think they've got a fair bit of room to grow. Like maybe they can make some top 4, top 3s. So that'd be kind of cool.
You got any thoughts on Hunter, CJ?
This roster sort of was the thing at the end of last season. Was they were pretty quick to sort of look around. So I've played a little bit against this Hunter sort of inclusion. I like it. I think it's always good to bring in new talent. Like how many times do we see it, you know, internationally, bring in these young guys and give them a chance to sort of, you know, foster them on a team and see if they can grow into some sort of a player. So I'm excited to see this Hunter. I like it. It's certainly better than sticking with Sprat, just because I think in terms of like their potential and growth.
Yeah.
Growth wise, I'm not saying that Sprat is a bad player. I'm just saying I'd rather see.
Get him off.
You know, we talk about the old guard always being there. You'd rather see the young guys coming up and you're seeing how well they can go. Yeah, with no disrespect to Sprat, I just think that you sort of look at, you know, if I'm Siki and Mock or Sprat in this situation, you're thinking as that team, all right, where can we really get to as a 3? Like they're not gonna challenge sort of the top 2, but like, hey, let's bring in a new guy, see if he can, you know, mix things up a bit, maybe push, like, you know, Siki now with, I guess, Mock and Hunter, like, does that now push him up a little bit? How, you know, Kami learnt mech once Fever got on the team. I didn't know how to do it still, but maybe that pushes Siki to a new level as well, because he sort of plateaued a little bit or declined since going over to America for a bit and then coming back. So it might push him up as well. So I think it's a good move for the team, and I'm looking forward to it. I agree, it's a top 6 team. Like I think they're a lock for top 6 every single time. Just whether they can make that next step and improve like their consistency, because I know I can see what Jimmah says, like in scrims, like they're gonna pop off every now and then and just be like, okay, but like that's not gonna win you, you know, or get you to a top 2, top 3 in a tournament every now and then, hitting a clip or having a really good game. So where they can find that consistency, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. And Hunter's had some pop-off performances so far. Even just this weekend, in the RLO for Kids tournament when he subbed in, he's been great. And I remember when Hunter and TK were like 13 and they were like super keen. And I guess OCE's only like, well, I guess, yeah, it was probably a year ago. OCE's prospects of like who are the next people coming in, those are the only 2 people I could say. Both of them have managed to make it into the top 8. Well, like through the top 16 qualifier, so seeded top 8. So very interesting to see. We also have a physicist. Now this is, I think, a bit more of a controversial change, considering how well they were doing. They remove Remick and add Caveman ban, and I don't actually know the circumstances. I'm purely guessing that Remick was dropped or kicked, and I know that they did trial a few people. It wasn't like, here's this person who's so good, we need to replace Remick with this person. I know that they tried different stuff. And it just seems odd to me. Like,
yes.
Why?
This is really weird, especially like, obviously, like, I feel like, you know, Jim is talking about Fork. We can always talk about these situations about what happened because rosters are all locked now. But, you know, Kami was even, when he was sort of looking, obviously Fever was heading off to Power, he was sort of, you know, looking at this, like Remick, Gus Ames, like these guys, and they were sort of pretty firm that, you know, no, we're sticking together as a team this season. Like, don't do anything. Like, we're not going anywhere. So then, like, all this other stuff happened. They locked in, and all of a sudden, Kami's getting messages from some of these guys going, well, actually, it's all changed now. You still got to spawn on Renegades for me. So I'm not sure what sort of happened in the space of a week or 2 in terms of this team, how they sort of were set on, you know, sticking together. They're obviously really improved. They were really impressive last season. Like, when they were putting it together, they had a really nice play style, and they were putting some good results together. And they were like, nah, let's stick together. And that was happening up until about 2 weeks before roster lock. And now we've got Ben, which seems like a last second sort of sort of thing, Jim. I don't know if you have much to add on this because I'm pretty out of the loop. But all I know is they were going to stick together. All of a sudden they haven't, and now they've got Ben.
Yeah, no, I think so. We scrimmed them a few times, and I think what started this all, and I don't have the insider knowledge. You can only just sort of spectate, I guess, like from the moves that happened. But I think it was with that PAX qualifier. I guess physicists weren't very satisfied with, how it went. I forget what happened. I think they bombed out reasonably early, and I think because they've had some good performances, they had high expectations for themselves. I guess maybe they thought, maybe they have to move away from Remick. Are there better options there? To me, it didn't make sense because when I heard they were willing to stick together, I was like, that's awesome. Like, do it. Like, grow together, learn what it's like to be a team, learn what it's like to push through, hard moments, when you plateau, what do you like? All that's really valuable in my opinion as a team. So I was really like, yeah, cool. Like, stick it together, even though I thought like Gus or someone would be picked up by perhaps a better team. And I think, they're a little bit weaker for it. Like, Remick's now on that Sprat roster. Ben's on this roster. They don't look as sharp and as pointy as they did. I guess, for some reason, Gus plus Remick plus Ames they were just a really challenging team to play against. Like, it just happens to be those three players culminate this interesting team that could upset. So, we'll see what they do. Like, you kind of have to go like, well, at the end of the day, they're the ones making the moves. Like, surely they see something, they have some kind of vision. But, as it stands, both rosters didn't look all that crash hot. I think I remember seeing someone in chat recently saying that new Sprat, Zen, Remick roster looked quite good. So I've yet to watch them.
He says until they only just scraped into the top 16.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I was just like, someone's like, oh, they look,
Super Lucky said they were the third best team in the region after they versed him.
Well, there you go.
And then they only just made it. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, there we go. So maybe Super Lucky start a bit of a trend, but we'll see what happens. See what they can work out. Like, I try to be the advocate of players and go, hey, look, if they're making the moves, I like to think that they have some kind of vision in mind, but we'll have to wait and see.
I just think there's more to it because, like, going back to what CJ said, I heard the same thing from Kami, and that was before the PAX qualifiers. So they were looking for maybe even Kami to play with them before PAX qualifiers, and so they played with Remick regardless. So I don't think the results of those PAX qualifiers led to this change happening. And on the same note, Caveman Ben was on another team, and he felt obviously that team didn't stick together in the end. They made I think that was Lurky and Morse or something like that he was playing with, and he switched over. So a little bit last minute. On paper, it's still a good team though, right? Like, you just got to give them a bit of time.
Yeah, definitely.
For some reason, I've been saying this week, I just keep forgetting we have qualifiers and then a PAX and then the regional. I'm just like tripping out here because that is weird.
Yeah, we got to wait 2 weeks.
PAX? Can I get a link? Can someone link in chat the PAX? Like, is there a bracket or a?
Yeah,
I've had it.
Oh, I don't. Wikipedia might not be updated yet. The JBL tournament.
Yeah.
Bass has got it. Nice one.
Beautiful, thank you. So no browse. But yeah, in terms of this lineup, it's weird. I don't know what's going on, but we'll have to wait and see. How they go in the qualifiers?
These guys, physicists, they failed in the top 8, but then they 3-0'd against like nothing too crazy in the in the closed qualifiers.
So they lost to Zen's team, swept by Ground Zero, and lost to Lurkers. Walcott, Lurky, TK. That's an interesting lineup. I'm sure you'll bring up.
Yeah, we've got that. We got that later on.
I'm looking forward to that one.
Not ideal. I mean, Scrub saying Lockie was right, but calling somebody the third best team off one series is usually not ideal. But it does show their potential, so that's ideal. We also have Gremlins, who are the XTC roster. Didn't do too much last season, but we were really impressed with Caleb. So good to talk about this team. Cobbo's been added instead of Pagsy to this roster, which is interesting to me because I've always rated Pagsy as well. So I guess, do you have any thoughts on this? Have you guys seen any matches or scrims from these guys?
I've seen a few. So we only just got out of scrims with them. So, I mean, you know, word around the grapevine is that yeah, Caleb can have his pop off moments. I'm not too sure where they kind of stand at the moment. Like I wonder because I believe that they performed quite well qualifying, didn't they? Oh, literally fourth. Good on them. Yeah, so they've done quite well. So I mean, on paper, I'm like, oh yeah, that should be a top 8 team. Like I don't really know much about Tonio and Caleb. I've seen Cobbo around quite a fair bit, and he's always sort of scraped into that sort of that 8th to 6th place right quite regularly. So you can only assume that it's in the similar kind of ballpark. I don't know where their Tonio and Caleb's growth will be. I know Caleb's sort of been competing for a fair bit now, I think, here and there. So I honestly don't know, but if anything, you know, if they've done well qualifying, then clearly they've got something working for them. And, you know, it'd be cool if they got another 4th place again. That'd be interesting.
Well, you know, Cobbo's an interesting one for me. He has his days where you're thinking, oh, hang on a minute, and I think this could be this team. That's kind of like how this team could be. They could have a day where you're like, okay, this team's looking all right. Then they could have a day where they're not quite bringing their best performance. So, I'm excited to see how they're going. I put them, you know, probably they didn't really beat much in the top 16 I'm looking at now. They beat Zen's team, but I'm thinking around that 6, 7, 8 mark for Gremlins, probably around there. If they get if they crack into, you know, higher than 6, I think they're doing a pretty good job getting like 5th, 4th. That'd be pretty impressive for those guys, but they'll only improve.
Hey, you've got them higher than I do. I've got them as like a not safe top 8. I still think they're in there. I think there's a few teams that didn't make top 8 in that first run, like Physicists and Usin in particular, that I think could come back and fight harder when it comes to the main event. So I think there's going to be a challenge there, and they're either going to be really close or they'll make top 8. And then when you make top 8, as we know, they can go anywhere. But next team is the placeholders, so the ex-Direwolves. Another... I think CJ might have some insights into this. So CJ,
what's happening here? How has Misty and Fiber got on a team again? That's what I want to know. Obviously I was a bit out of the loop, but I thought there's no way that I'll be seeing Misty and Fiber on a team, and all of a sudden,
like
Misty
ever
and Fiber,
again.
these guys are like, they are inseparable. They are like, you know, they are two, I don't know, I say like eternal flames or something. Like, it doesn't matter.
Two
what
idiots
you
in a
do.
pod.
Mate.
Yeah,
Oh, there we
there's
go.
just no way that these two cannot be. Anything can happen. Obviously, Fiber, you know, the sort of talk on the town, you know, before Kami made his move was sort of Kami and Fiber were going to be a team. And they were sort of looking around. And obviously now Kami's decided to completely abandon his own region that he's been a pillar of for the past 5 years and decided to leave. So now Fiber's back with Misty. And I've added Vortex, obviously minus Hawk. So I think that you'd have to say, you'd have to say individually going, you know, from Vortex, you'd say is a downgrade from Hawk, but it's not all about individual performance. I think those guys had a bit of a, you know, there was a bit of a.
They were poo with Hawk.
Who actually wants to play the game? Sort of situation going on there. So if these guys, you know, put in, they're challenging for top 4. I think, or top 3. I think they can beat a Ground Zero on their day. I think, as we said, it is that sort of. I'm not saying... Well, Vought is a great player. I think, like, statistically and everything, like, Hawk, if he actually played more than 4 hours a week, he could have been a, you know... The sky is the limit for him, but unfortunately he's got some IRL, you know... I want to say issues,
Smoke breaks, drink breaks,
you know,
Bunnings breaks.
Not quite in the zone at the moment, you know, IRL. So, you know, Vought... nothing taken away from Vought. Vaught's one of those guys that, on his day, he can, like... When he was on Bliss, like, I don't know, like, on his day, he just hits everything. Like, he skim doubles off walls. Like, he's always playing 200%. He sort of reminds me of a bit of it like when a Mox on as well. Like, they can just sort of go nuts and hit everything. That's sort of like a Vought for me. He's like all or nothing.
Yeah.
Like when he's cracking in and he's hitting everything, he's great. Otherwise, he'll randomly not do much.
That's been the problem with for Vortex, is that I've always rated it really highly, and I've seen him play really well outside of RLCS, and I only remember one really good RLCS performance from him, and that was the first event of the third split that we just had, where he was like MVP for Team Bliss, and he was popping. And then we don't see it. He played well again this weekend. He had like a really strong performance, got placeholders a win over Ground Zero, which was obviously a surprise. And is that going to happen when the main event pulls around?
I think that like there's so many teams right now fighting like for that spot next to Ground Zero. You know what I mean? There's sort of like the Lake Show, like the Sicky team.
Fourth spot is open, yeah.
Yeah, fourth spot is like a battle right now. And I think any of them as well could get third. And then it's like another leap to get into top 2. So I think right now they need to focus on knocking off Ground Zero and then pushing into that top 2.
No, definitely. And just to add more to that too, like while I think a lot of us in the region, recognize that Ground Zero are probably that third team. I mean, they're still quite green in my opinion too. Like, yeah, that they've had some good wins, but that's really it. Like they've had some good wins. So I wouldn't be surprised if, placeholders are right there and they find the edge of them, or even that Sicky Mock Hunter team, it could be on par as well. Like this is why I'm really interested to see placeholders, see how they go on LAN. That they're going to be playing not right out of the gate, but they're playing in the lower, straight to start the lower bracket run on stage, right? So, and I think they're actually playing against the Mock Sicky Hunter team, actually. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So that'll be really cool to see. We get to see them go head to head, and then, assuming things go how they're meant to go, they'll be coming across Ground Zero next. And then you get to see, hey, like this is really like it's a different context because it's a LAN, but you'll get to see sort of, hey, from that third to sort of fifth place, what's that going to look like? Is it going to be quite a tussle? Are we going to have any gatekeepers come up, or is it really going to be a bit of a free for all? It's like whoever shows up on the day, that's the third best team, or even pull a top 2.
Do you think, Yummy, with, having, I guess one thing I'm just thinking about now, obviously we've got this local LAN, sort of 4 teams. It reminds me of sort of the, the good old ESLs back in the day.
Days.
Do you think though, and obviously we had Gfinity, do you think that sort of, obviously it's not an international event, but just for me, even going to sort of smaller LANs, you're having to get used to different setups, different, just little things like chairs, game feels different, monitor feels different. You're playing on a live environment with your team. Do you think that sort of we have missed that as a region in terms of like that has helped us internationally? You look at sort of Chiefs when they were always playing like ESLs and stuff like that. They had the throwdown LANs before they went to, Worlds. Do you think that like even though it's not, it's just a local LAN, but we're sort of, we have missed that, getting that experience in somewhat in terms of playing like live?
I think it gave us an advantage because OCE were like the region of LANs back in the day. That we had the most LANs compared to anyone else, especially for higher level teams. And when it came to Chiefs, you had the ESL LANs and stuff that were very similar to this one, smaller prize pool, much smaller than 10 grand, but 10 grand nowadays is somehow small amount. And they gained a lot of confidence from winning those. You go on to your different setups, you're playing in a weird scenario, and you win, and you gain a lot of confidence from that. And then the LANs that were there to qualify for Worlds, I think that was the best experience of any LAN, realistically. As good as going to Worlds, essentially, apart from like actually getting to play against international teams, which was the advantage, is because those were super high pressure LANs. They were often more nerve-wracking than the actual Worlds themselves because everybody wanted to qualify. Once you were there, you were kind of like, okay, we're here, let's just do the best we can, compared to having to be at LAN and trying to do your best, which you got to experience, I guess, in New Zealand. Did you feel like that was like a high-pressure LAN for you guys?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, well, we had that for Throwdown. We had PAX Melbourne as well, season 4.
Oh, yeah, you did, yeah.
So yeah, it's awesome. Like I think it's something that, you know, I like for me it was more just like, yeah, playing in a different environment. Like there's so many external factors that are different than the comfort of your own home, that I think that once you get, you know, once you become, or you sort of get to the top, or you're starting to make a lot of majors, you do sort of get used to the fact that, okay, everything feels a bit different. Like you're just going to have to sort of go with the flow a bit more. Whereas when you're at home, like you're nearly in like this, like a science lab. Everything's just clinical. You know what I mean? Like it's what you've been doing every day. You're scrimming in the same spot. You're sitting in the same spot. Like everything's so routine. To sort of break that, you know, and you know, have these different setups is really huge, because you need to learn to adapt and, you know, play still at a high level at different setups. So I think it's huge. You know, it's obviously not maybe improving in terms of as a team, you know, internationally. You know, you're playing, you know, you're not versing really high quality teams, but you're just getting used to adapting, I guess you'd say, to like different setups and adapting as a team.
And that's like the cool thing that I see coming up, right? Is like, you know, you sort of flag the question marks around, let's say, ground zero, right? Going to a land, you know, they've got very minimal experience compared to what else is in OCE. And I think just these lands, I think are really are like little wins for the up and comers, right? Like Hunter's going to get out there and feel what it's like to go on stage. Now, let's say, you know, I'm not saying Hunter's going to bomb out, but let's say it's a really challenging experience for him. Well, I think, you know, just like all young people are, they grow like weeds. Like they're going to develop whether they like it or not in a lot of ways. And I like to think that Ground Zero in the same boat as well. Like I know they had that Commonwealth Games event. I didn't actually catch that. But I mean, you know, I'd be curious to know, like, you know, have they grabbed anything from that and they're taking that into this land, right? And let's say they do make it to a major. Will they have something in their back pocket that they've picked up, you know, from it, right? And I think a lot of the times, you know, I think you touched base on it perfect, CJ, is that, you know, lands break your routine. You're not in the clinical, everything's set up, you know, it's just like, it's just another day in the office. It's a whole foreign thing. And, you know, and that's just like, you know, we're so sensitive to our environments, and if you completely change that up and then you have a big booming crowd, I mean, that's just a whole different world, right? So
I think
I
as
think it's
well.
gonna be cool.
I think as well, just like when you're in a bedroom, you can easily like trick yourself, no matter like the situation or the pressure, into like, you know, this series doesn't matter. But I think as soon as you get in a live environment, you got your teammates next to you. You can see that one of your teammates is stressed, like visually. You know what I mean? It's not just how they're playing or how they're talking over comms. Like you can see maybe someone's a bit more jittery, or they're, you know, getting tilted, because like that's a big thing as well. Like seeing their visual reaction to stuff, or, you know, how they're coping in game. So I think that, yeah, like you can trick yourself when you're in your computer, like in the comfort of your own home, like, oh, who cares? Like no one's watching this, no one cares, and sort of play perfect. But then when you're at land, you can't hide, even if there's no crowd there, or there's only, you know, 50 people at PAX. Like you're still like live with your teammates. Like you get exposed, if that makes sense. So I think it's good. But before we jump on the next slide, I'm gonna bounce. I've got to go grab some food and stuff. So I'll leave you to. We've covered the top 6.
Yeah.
You guys can cover the 7 to 16. That you can uncover some.
To
hidden
be
gems,
fair, I
but
already
that's
have
it
3
for me.
slides left, so or
Okay.
4, yeah.
Well, you guys cover that, and thanks everyone for having me. And I'm looking forward to PAX this weekend. Jimmah, all the best at PAX, brother.
Cheers,
I'm
mate. It'll
looking
be
forward
good.
to it. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming in.
You going, CJ, to
Legends.
PAX?
No, I'm not going to PAX, but I'll be tuning in. I love watching a little
Viewing
local one.
party, PAX viewing party. Let's go.
Let's run it. All right, boys. Much love. Peace.
All right,
Alright, see ya.
catch
Thanks
ya.
for coming. All right, beautiful. CJ's gone. You know, we only planned this show to be an hour long at the maximum, but you know, talking and all that, and also we didn't brief CJ on that. So he said he was only going to come for half an hour. He came for an hour, and we didn't finish.
Good on him.
Yeah. All right. Well, moving on to the teams, we got the Flying Kangaroos. Yeah, CJ doesn't know anything about these guys anyway. I'm excited. I'm excited for Airmat because I don't know, because I've versed him so many times for so many years in ranked that I kind of just like seeing the name, and I want to see him do well. And the X-Kibbles roster with Sour Baked Potato, that's not a bad team to get into.
No, not at all. And like the cool thing that like Baked Potato's got for his name is that like he's taken down good teams in the past, right? Like I still remember
Took down
when
Renegades.
yeah, well that's right. You know, when he had the Laxon roster as well, right? I mean, like he's not a player that's just gonna bomb out, right? Like I haven't spoken with Potato in a while, but if I had to guess, he still strikes me as a guy who just enjoys competing, playing Rocket League. Like, I think he gets a bit of a thrill out of coming across top teams. Like, I know a lot of smaller teams sort of like watch the bracket and sort of hope they can get like the better run, but I think he gets a bit of a buzz out of seeing quite a mountain to climb, right? So I mean, good on him. Like, I haven't seen much of Airmac. I know, you know, Sau's been growing as a player, so it's not a bad roster. I mean, you know, like, do you comfortably see these guys, you know, floating around the top 8, or do you see him sort of dropping down into that 16th to 8th place more regularly?
I have them in the bottom half, to start with at least. But you never know. Like 3-4 months of solid practice in OCE and other smaller regions, you see that's usually enough for you to skyrocket. But I don't think these guys have been together for that entire time, for the entire off season. Their results in the qualifier, like they did qualify top 8, but realistically, their only big scout that would like be enough to get them into the top 8 was against Usun in a game 5. And obviously, in hindsight, Usun been struggling across the weekend. That's the Sprat, Zenulus, and Remic team.
Remic team, yep.
So, yeah. And I'm also... Oh, as a note, Ghost isn't on a team, and we also went back to Hawk. Hawk is not on a team. Soft retirements from both of them. Neither of them announced a retirement, but we don't see them, so... We don't know if they'll come back. In fact, it's probably more likely they don't come back if they haven't announced it. At least the way it is in OCE.
I mean, yeah, sometimes I feel like a lot of these players, like, you know, they want a decent team. They want familiar names. If they don't get it, they just sort of sit out. And if the opportunity comes up, they might have another go. So, yeah, I guess soft retirement is the way to see it. I mean, Hawk, I thought he retired 3 years ago, but I still see his name show up. Yeah, we sort of did, right? And then here he is. So I mean, like, I'm expecting CJ to jump back in at the end of the at the end of the season at some stage.
Yeah, when he can't get an OCE casting gig. Yeah. That'll be interesting to see. I think there will be some other retirements that kind of undo. We also have Cowabunga. This is our last team. There were 7 teams. So we had 3 teams that stayed exactly the same as a trio, and 7 teams here in the top 16 that have maintained 2/3 of their roster. And this is the Cowabunga roster. I think they were Obunga last season. Or at least according to Liquipedia, they're now Cowabunga with Moss, Joel, and Spidoge, who did a retirement and come back. I can't remember if he announced a retirement, but he certainly took some time away and then still played more ranked than literally anybody else in OCE. So he obviously still loves the game.
Yeah, no, that happens. I remember when Scarth retired, he suddenly like tripled his hours somehow and ranked. And I think Spider's in the same boat, right? Like, he announced his retirement, and then every OCE person who was streaming would bump into Spidoge 2s or something. And he was actually very good. Like, I think he's quite the ranked warrior, right? Like, he hasn't lost it. Like, I know a lot of people who put down the controller for a little bit tend to really drop off, and sometimes making up that lost time's really hard. But I guess he's just Spidoge. Like, he's just he's unable to change. He just is, and he will perform like Spidoge. But, you know, like, he does well in ranked, so who knows? Maybe the Cowabunga might find a couple of upsets. I know, what is he on the? I can't even remember the Ground Zero roster. He was on
Spidoge.
Yeah,
and last split.
Yeah, and that project really fell to pieces. But you know, maybe this team's it. So see what happens. And maybe, speaking of Walcott, do you have him up next to you?
Up next beautiful. I've got multiple teams. So now I got 2 slides of teams that are brand new, and also the title system has been broken. So let me just update it. So if you notice when I do this, I've got them accidentally linked. So if you have a look, it'll upload it across. So now we can't go back to the old slides. That's why the first slide was broken. And I didn't want to fix it. So these are brand new teams. The first one we've got Lurkers, Walcott, Lurky, TK. I didn't expect too much. I expected a 9th to 16th kind of team, especially based off how Walcott did in the last split. I expected them to kind of be that 7th, 8th base team. and then they bombed out of the first event. Didn't make it into the second event because Walcott failed to show up, and so they played with their sub, and then yeah, so they didn't have a great split. But TK, I guess, is the big one we need to talk about. He only just turned 15, able to play in RLCS for the first time, and they qualified through the top 8.
Yeah, no, so I know nothing about TK. All I know is that if anyone is streaming an OCE and they Q1s, they're going to bump into TK. Like, he grinds it. He seems to do quite well. Like, I've seen him sort of bring it to some good names out there. So I guess he's just one of those, 14, 15-year-old kids that just have the mechanics right. They got an eye for the game. Lurky, I think he's a bit older now. I don't know how old he is, but he'll sort of consider one of those mechier kids as well. And I'm not surprised that you got the dad Walcott in there, right? Sort of helping out. Like, I am completely not surprised that this team is a top 8 team. I can see them bombing out. I can see them, maybe they do go like 0-3 in a Swiss, and then another time they take down like a team that maybe like is 4th, 6th or something like that, and whatever. Like, I consider them to be quite volatile, and maybe that's what Walcott wants. Maybe he's like, what, I'm happy to have a roster and roll the dice. If I keep going with the same names, it's not going to be too fun. But yeah, chuck in Lurky, chuck on a kid that's on the come up, and see what kind of roster you get.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a roll of the dice. I still don't have them as a top 8. Or at least like they're not proven in any way. They they got 3-0'd by both placeholders and the Lake Show. Expected losses to take, and their win was against Physicists. Their kind of big win was against Physicists, who, obviously 3-0'd in the following event. So may have had a bad day, may not have. Maybe another team sitting around that area. So. It'll be interesting to see how they go, but I don't expect them to start off the gate strong. It'll be interesting to see how TK plays, if he's on stream, that kind of thing, where there's a lot more nerves that come with 10,000 plus people watching.
Yeah, definitely.
Sum's parents, not too much to know about. I don't know really much about Sum. I've seen Joshua DX around for ages, but not too much. But Snowy's there, so he's back. You can't keep the geriatric down. We tried to kick the walking cane from underneath him, and now he has a full-on walker. So he's got a lot more stability apparently. But
there we go.
Yeah, he's here. Okay, well done, Snowy. You're back.
I mean, put it this way: like, every time Snowy retires, changes his name. Here he is in the chat. I'm just like, you know what? We're gonna see him back. I think the guy just loves just playing Rocket League, right? So, I know nothing about Sum. Joshua, I think I've only ever seen him in ranked. So I don't know what this roster's going to be like. I would like to think that maybe Snowy's played with them a fair bit. Maybe they get along. Because I know Snowy's quite an easy going guy to get along with, right? So. I imagine, maybe they just sort of hit up like a good roster, like they're sort of hanging out, and they found themselves some results. I'm not too sure. I haven't scrimmed any of these teams at the moment, so I can't really give you my insight on how they actually perform. But, they found this spot, though. Like, where did they actually end up finishing? They got 9, 10, 11th, did they?
Yeah.
Yep.
Not bad.
Not bad.
Exo Clan wins, not too bad. Watermelonium's a Daisu team, so there's always that. I don't know who's Allegiance, but I'm assuming I don't have high hopes. It's a Bal team. So nothing too crazy from them. I don't have high expectations of them either, but I'm sure they're having fun. And it's very close. In 3 months, we celebrate Snowy's 28th birthday, and I want to see him going until he's 30.
Oh, that'd be great. Imagine that. Imagine a bloke in their 30s making top 8s. Like, that deserves something. I'll follow that up with RLO or something.
Wait, huh? What do you mean, Snowy? That's not right.
Wait, is he 29 this year? Nah, surely not. Oh, is he 27?
He's 27 now, according to Wikipedia. You
Oh,
just
there we
turned
go.
27? Okay, your Wikipedia birth date's wrong. Oh, no, he's just old. He's just forgotten. Okay, I get it. Yeah, very cool. All right, Goblins. Don't know these guys. Other than Jack A's made a reasonable number of top 16s now. But I was probably quite impressed. I got to see a little bit of them on the weekend with Fades. Fade was looking really good. So it could be a team, I think, that over the split make a bit of a run up. We'll see. Hopefully they make a few top 16s. I want to see like teams making regular top 16s and getting better and grinding up. It does seem like a pretty strong field in that like middle lower pack.
Yeah, and I think for me, like, you know, I've sort of gotten into a bit of a bubble now where I sort of know the top teams because that's always sort of scrim now. And so for me, it's quite good to see names I haven't heard of, right? I remember there was a while where Malkin was a player to keep an eye on. Like, he had some great mechanics and stuff. And I remember, I've already forgotten some of the names. But, you know, there are a few foreign names that are quite mechy, sort of, that take you by surprise. Like I said, I don't recognize many of these names here. I've never heard of Fades or Callistic. So, you know, I'd love to see them, you know, more names come in, right? I feel like OCE has got quite the quota to catch up on with all the retirements or disqualifications and bans we've had. So I would love to see some more talent come up because, yeah, and I think CJ sort of touched on it, you know, we sort of consolidated the top talent now, and I feel like we sort of need to bulk it out a little bit. So Goblins, no pressure at all, but, you know, you better be it.
They got a notable win against Ussen, 3-0 against Ussen. So
well, that's good. Oh, that's okay.
I mean, again, in hindsight, also only just managed to qualify, but they're certainly a team that probably I would have called a top 8 team. So
yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, we recognise all the names on Ussen, right? Like Stratton's have been playing around for a fair while, and we know what Remix come up to. So that's a fair performance from them.
And to be fair, Super Lucky again said that they were the third best team. So if you beat the
That's
third best team,
yeah, that's
you're
right.
the third best team now. So
yeah, or even better. So
apparently Fades. This is just a little tidbit from Wikipedia. Apparently he's from Turkey, which is very cool. He's Turkish Rocket League player.
Yeah. So we have transfers as well. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't got too many results like leading back in time. His first result was Bluebird's rival in September. So
okay, well, it's still very recent. Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, it'd be cool to keep an eye on him. I mean, I'm seeing chat seems to get around Fades, so who knows? How old is he actually?
Yeah, if he's 15, it's over, you know. But
it's over. Yeah, if he's 15, that's it. Like
it says he's 15. Wikipedia says he's 15. Oh god!
All right, give him till the end of this season to be on a top 2 team. I'm calling it. Wherever Fades is, yep. We'll get your contract.
Sorry, Callistic Jack. It was a good team while it lasted. That one split.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
All right. And then we got Zawu, Tiger Shoe, Samuel. On paper, actually, like a pretty decent team. Like Shu and Samuel have had great performances in the past, and then they split up. I remember there was a time, maybe before the second split of last season, or maybe it was all the way back to RLCS. It all kind of melds into one for me. I think it was an RLCS, where I think it was a Shu Samuel team were doing incredibly well. Yeah, I think it was the last split of RLCS. They were doing incredibly well and then kind of fell apart. So you never know. Maybe part 2.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. Like I remember, like I've seen them have a few performances. Did they? Am I making this up? My brain's telling me they had Caleb on the roster or someone like that. I've completely
back in the
forgotten.
Day, or
back in the day, maybe. Oh, I'm not too sure. Like
I think they had Kruzzer or something like that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Shu and Kruzzer. I forget. I know that they were around, or Kurdo or someone. I forget. But yeah, I remember. You know, they had some wins. I think they pulled like 1 or 2 top 8s back then or something.
I think they just had really good like qualifier days where they were in the group stages, and you had like groups of 4, and they had some really good results in those ones.
Yep.
But never like a huge result on the main event.
Yeah.
But this is so long ago that it's like kind of just like sitting at the edge of my mind, so I can't 100% remember. Like the Donkey Squad roster as well. They had like huge days.
Yeah. God, I'm trying to remember. Is that the potato team?
That was with Finn, Kaka, and Matro.
Oh, that's the one. Yeah, yeah.
And they were getting really good results in that group stage, and then
yeah, no, I do remember. The
Samuel and
Donkey
Shu
Squad.
played with Cairo for a bit as their third in that time.
Yeah, my memory's shot. We've had too many roster changes. It's been too long.
Yeah, and RLCS is a long time ago with a lot of tournaments. So, yeah. I don't know why I remembered Kraser as their third, but I think there's some potential there. Usun, the team that maybe should have been a lot better than how they qualified. It's almost unbelievable that they qualified as 14 to 16, because I think this is a team that, like, you look at the names on paper, they should be a solid team that gets better over time, because that's what Sprat and Xenulus especially do, and Remick has done it once, but Sprat has done it on 5 different rosters. So Xenulus over the last year has
definitely
started a split on a team with decent potential, with strongish players, and then gotten better as the split goes on. Might be the same case here, and it was just a really bad start, but
yeah. Well, I think I don't know what the bracket's looking like, but I'm fairly certain we're playing Usun first, right? I mean, if they're 15th, I guess, so that makes sense, I think. And Sprat, for some weird reason, he wakes up early in the morning. He sits in free play for 30 minutes, and he just hits bangers on target all morning long. I don't know what it is, and Zen has his moments too. Like, for some reason, Zen will just randomly decide to pop off in a series too. So, I mean, it's interesting to see him down there, because there's actually a lot of teams in that bottom half that I'd prefer to play against first than this roster. But obviously, a bit of a shaky start. That there's probably something there that has to be addressed, right, or something that they're going against. I know. Well, only just
maybe
recently
like mental.
Yeah, it could be mental. Could be, in fact, it's a new roster, right? And I mean, obviously Remic's fairly new to it, so they're pretty green. I would expect if they're sticking out this, this roster, that they will improve. I mean, Sprat and Zen seem to, find themselves in the top 8 quite comfortably, I guess.
Top
sort of
4
sitting at 8.
even.
Yeah, top 4 even. There you go. Like on a really good day, right? So, this could be a good roster. I mean, maybe this could be, in hindsight, a really good move for Remick. I could probably see this roster, perhaps passing the current physicists, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, that's not saying too much if the current physicists aren't doing great. Though the current physicists also did a lot better in qualifiers than Usun did. I was calling them Usun as well, because that's how it looks, but I'm assuming it's Usun because,
Us.
Yeah. But,
true.
But yeah, very interesting. I want them to stick together. That's all I want from these guys, because Sprat has been on a new roster every single split, or at least changed someone on his roster. Very similar for Zen, yeah. So Remick may have stuck together a little bit longer, or just hasn't been quite in the limelight as much as well. So
hopefully they stick it out. I mean, it's not a bad team. Like, I mean, I expect to see him floating around the top 8, and that would be great for Remick, right? He's only sort of had recent whiffs of that, so see what happens.
Awesome. And then finally, Dubbo Demons. Yeah, not a team to I don't even think I had these guys. I had a short list before the event on like kind of notable team changes, because I was going to do this stream on Friday. Ended up doing it today instead due to availability. But congratulations on Chubb on finishing his retirement. Well done. The classic OCE retirement. He did a retirement tweet. He's back. I think that was not a surprise. I think he always had in his mind that there's a chance to come back anyway. So I don't think it was like a hard retirement from him on Twitter. But Paradise and Pingu have been around for a long time. Like a long, long time. Paradise has made a few top 16s. Pingu's had at least some close chances back before a top 16 was a thing. So
Yeah, no, definitely. Because I think we played against Dubbo Demons right out of the gate. I couldn't spectate that one, but pretty one-sided, I guess. So I mean, and I think that's sort of what you kind of expect when you sort of get to the bottom end of the barrel, right? Is like, hey, I mean, I've seen Paradise's name around for a bit. Chubb's obviously back, and so I mean, I don't know where they'll sort of come if they stick out this project or what their goal is, right? But I mean, they got a cool team name, so I'll give them that one. They sort of got my backing over most teams solely because they were creative with their name. So good on them.
Apparently, Pingu also did a retirement tweet. The one thing I know, Dubbo Demons, I know Chubb is from Dubbo because Fever would say he lives near Chubb. Does anybody else on this team live? I can't imagine there's 3 or even 4 people in OCE that live in Dubbo, of all places. But does anybody know if anyone else lives in Dubbo?
Yeah, see, I was under the impression that all 3 of them did.
Surely not.
I mean,
Surely
that's what I
not.
think. Like, surely not. Like, I mean, yeah, I mean, no one lives near me, right? So, therefore, no one else lives near anyone else.
I think that's on purpose, though. I don't think anybody wants to live near you.
Oh, good. No, fair.
Yeah. All right, so that's all the teams from OCE, and thank you everyone on YouTube who's been watching this. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the other regions, but we're going to end the video here. Thanks, Jimmah. Thanks, CJ, as well, for coming along.